So we've done a pretty impressive job of our theme of traveling keepsakes and toys and mementos and so forth for today. So this is our 50th story time. It's only going to be a short little one today, which is a part 1, and I'll finish that off next month. So this is episode 1 or something.
This is John Bear, who was given to me when I was about 3, I think. He used to, believe it or not, but he goes he did go lots of places with me, including several hospital visits in which the staff were most impressed. But he's very special.
He's very old now.
Look at his old face. He's like Old Bear.
He's got a really good little jacket. I love his
I love his little jacket too.
Yeah,
nice.
The waistcoat.
Yeah, he's very good to cuddle.
He is extremely good for cuddling.
Yeah.
I brought him out before and I was holding him and going, oh wow, yeah, he is really good to cuddle.
This rabbit has also been on hospital visits and just about fooled a nurse who came in. She was like looking, and eventually she said, "Is that real?"
Is that allowed?
Which speaks to what other things may have been in the hospital if she wasn't 100% sure on first sight. Therapy bunny.
Yeah, I think she thought that I'd snuck in an animal.
Really cute.
Scruffy is here too, but I can't hold both rabbits while I'm reading. And I've also got my paper crane here. Now, last time I made a mistake because I'm pretty sure last time I said this was Mr. No Name, but that's not true because Mr. No Name is Emily's one, isn't it, Emily?
Yes, you're right. Oh, you're right. I have Mr. No Name, so I don't know what yours is called then.
This one is anonymous, the paper crane, because they need to be similarly named. Yes.
Yes, of course. That's right. Yes. I think
who has Claire got for animal?
Yes,
I have a little wooden bear who has definitely travelled. He's at least 20 years old and he did originate from Ireland, but beyond that I can't really remember because he's been everywhere, man. But yes, he likes to wave.
Who have Jane and Andrew got?
You
better tell us, Andy.
We can't see it, Andrew.
It's a panther bear.
Panther bear.
They've won 2 games in a row.
3 games in a row.
Right, so it's a South Adelaide Panther.
And
mascot.
Here's Janie's very old bear.
Oh, hello, old bear.
Very old bear. How much can an old bear bear?
Yeah, don't even ask.
And we've got Basil.
Basil?
Basil.
Yeah.
We have got Wombat, who's actually a stand-in for Barry's Wombat that got destroyed.
No, he might be in the shed.
He might be in the shed. So you tell everyone about your original Wombat.
He used to be used in the classroom and go on excursions, and in the holidays, kids would go into a raffle to take him on holiday when they went on holiday, and they had to take pictures and write stories about it. So he got to go lots of different places. Sometimes with good kids, sometimes with not so good. So he ended up with one eye at one stage, bit of a chewed ear.
And a few stitches. Yeah. And we have Bova, who, for those who weren't here earlier, is one from Sarah and Lloyd's after year 12 excursion to KI. But that makes him reasonably old, maybe 15 years. Yes. And we have Toy Muffy, as opposed to real Muffy. So we had a cat called Muffy, and we also had Toy Muffy, and Sarah had that when she was very, very tiny. So that one's 30 plus.
So I've got Lammy. Lammy came to me Easter, first year of uni, I think. And Lammy has been on a lot of holidays. Not quite all of them. Occasionally she got forgotten, which is a little bit sad for her. But I think she's been to about 8 different countries, including Antarctica. So she's a very fancy lamb.
Frozen lamb.
Did she have a little jumper to put on when she was in Antarctica?
You didn't, but the people who were making sure that all our shoes were clean and stuff before we stepped on land gave her a little vacuum, so she feels very special.
This is actually a mini one of my keepsake.
Can you go get the? Where is it?
Is it huge?
You'll be able to see us if I go and
Can
get
you go and get it?
Okay, I'll go and get the keepsake.
Got Charmander, I think.
Yes, Charmander. And this is a purple platypus kind of duck thing called Puis.
That is very big.
How much room have you got left in the house, for goodness sake?
This one actually, I was working at Johnny's, John Martin's, and I don't know whether we were married at that stage or not.
No, we weren't married.
We weren't married yet, but I came out after work one after late afternoon, and sitting in the driver's seat was this. Margaret had bought it as a present for me. She knew I used to like the Glenelg Tigers footy side. And so she got me a massive tiger, and it was just sitting in the driver's seat of the car. So this is a mini one that was more transportable, but
transportable.
This is what the keepsake's about, and I won't let her get rid of it. I refuse.
Great.
Who's next to Charmander in between?
This
Keepsake
is a very old kangaroo made out
Oh,
of kangaroo skin with fur. Now I think this is as old as me.
wow.
He's
Very
been
old.
well loved. Now
Yeah.
he was in pretty well pristine condition and had travelled with me to New South Wales and back as a child, or in my teenage years, but he lost his nose. Lloyd used to love this kangaroo, and he got taken to a craft group, and the kids used to be separated into the little babies, the toddlers, and the bigger kids. And Lloyd was a toddler at the time, and he threw this over the fence into the next section, and he got sort of lost in the toys for a few months, and that's why he gone from pristine condition to like this. No nose. So yeah, he's pretty old. I just cut him.
You've had an adventure.
I also have my keepsakes tattooed on me, so
Yes.
they travel with me everywhere.
You can't forget yours when you go on a trip. They're attached to your skin. Most of the topics that you've given me, I've managed to put into this first half. Some of them, I know how they're going to come in, but they haven't come in yet, up to the point where I'm up to with this story. So at the end, I'll give you some options for some of those things about how they're going to come in, and we can also add a few things if you like. So there are three that fall into that category. One is trying to mimic animals. The Guinness hasn't come in yet. And our seniors sports. So a bit of a choice at the end about what the sport's going to be next time and some of the other bits and pieces there. But we have got when winning a prize is actually stressful. Use of your very basic or minimal knowledge of your second language. The traveling toy or pet with an Instagram account. Paper cranes. Stressful or short notice school or community events such as sports day, book week, or charity dress up fundraisers. When you set off on your trip and then you realize you forgot something essential, and other last minute mishaps. And weird places cats go to sleep. And finally, this is barely there yet, this one, contagious forgetting of the word you're looking for. So that will come in a bit more next time. So a quick little poem here, which is about paper cranes. I'm just going to put mine down over there. It won't be in the shot anymore, but well, actually, let's put Anonymous back here. Yeah, he's still sort of involved that way. So this is called Taking Flight. Soft paper under fingertips, folding into feathers imagined. A square of colour calling calm into the hands that hold it. One moment, just a shape, shifting into being, becoming. Buoyant and bright, a symbol of singing hope. A bird formed of dreams, taking flight.
That's lovely.
Very good.
Now, part 1 today is called Paper Cranes and Pesky Prizes. Betty sat at the fold-out plastic table, surrounded by squares of coloured paper, children, and members of the local community, wearing expressions ranging from delight to complete consternation. Betty felt that she might have made a better paper crane folding instructor had she been given even the smallest bit of notice about being one. Unfortunately, what had actually happened was her daughter Katie had rung her at 9 o'clock the previous evening in a panic because she'd forgotten about the school Harmony Day event the next day. Not only did Katie have nothing orange for herself or her daughter Renee to wear, but neither she or Renee had prepared a craft activity to demonstrate, which was expected of everyone attending. Betty, being 87 years old and unfussed by such nonsense, had of course volunteered to attend in Katie's place. She had repurposed some orange tulle that had come wrapped around a gift hamper to make herself and 14-year-old Renee a pair of orange fascinators. Then she'd gathered up every scrap of foldable paper in her own house and her neighbour Barb's and spent what remained of the evening cutting out squares. Paper cranes were simple, pretty and symbolic of peace, so Betty figured they would make the ideal craft activity. Renee was duly embarrassed by her fascinator and opted for helping with cutting out bunting at another table, while Betty had her moment of panic as she realised it had been a number of years since she actually last folded a paper crane. With the help of a resourceful teacher named Yvette, YouTube on Yvette's phone, and a few screwed up bits of paper, Betty had recovered her crane folding skills. Teaching the procedure to others, however, proved an entirely different challenge. For starters, it only really worked when the learner was facing in the same direction as her, was tall enough to peer over her shoulder, was not distracted by roaming volunteers offering snacks or alternative activities, and made precise, firm folds using the table. The assembled learners were instead looking at what Betty was doing from all manner of unsuitable angles, trying to fold in midair or leaning on the backs of chairs, and were routinely being pulled away by the lure of popcorn, baking, clay jewellery, or activities that were no more interesting, but which looked on first glance to be easier. Betty didn't think that being 87 and here as a favour, she ought to care whether children, teachers and guardians wanted to fold paper cranes with her. But she found that she rather did. Every time someone came up to her table, she felt a little bit pleased. And every time one of the trainee folders gave up on the challenge, she felt a little bit hurt. The resourceful teacher, named Yvette, came bustling back over to Betty, holding rolls of thread and jars of beads, and balancing a book of raffle tickets on top of it all. "Katie tells me you're learning Italian, Betty," she smiled. "The first prize in our raffle today is a big discount on a trip to Europe. We're very lucky to have some parents working at travel agencies. Maybe you could enter the raffle, who knows? Perhaps you'll get to put your Italian to use." Betty narrowed her eyes at the square of paper she was pinning to the table with one pink nail-polished finger. She thought about her Italian lessons and how they'd gone so far. "I'm far too old to fly to Europe," she told Yvette sternly. Yvette set the threads and beads down on the table. Katie tells me you're in a live action role-playing group, she remarked. I'd say anyone who's up to that is up to some travel. Betty pursed pink lipsticked lips and restrained herself from telling Yvette about vampire fangs that attached to one's dentures and how it was possible to convert a surprising number of LARP scenes to knitting sessions. She wondered what else Katie had told Renee's teachers about her. Anyhow, Yvette went on, it's all for charity. Betty sighed and bought several tickets. Who ever won raffle prizes anyway? If any of her tickets came up, it was sure to be for a fluffy bath mat or a loofah and some candles. In all her years of buying raffle tickets, Betty had never won the main prize. That sort of thing just didn't happen. Yvette apparently had resourceful plans for the threads and beads, and sometime later, Betty and a few helpful Year 8s were busy trying to disentangle the long chains of paper cranes they'd only recently assembled. It had sounded beautiful. In reality, it was knotty. Someone tapped on the microphone at the front of the hall and announced that it was time to draw the raffle. Betty fished her raffle tickets from the bag on the back of her walking frame with one hand, still holding one end of a chain of cranes with the other. As the speaker on the microphone droned on, Betty began to relax. None of her tickets had been cold. She'd made a donation to a good cause, and she'd escaped any resulting prizes with the potential to be stressful. Then the announcer called, "Blue ticket, 6B. Betty glanced over her tickets on the table. They were all blue, but the closest number she could see was a 9. Phew, off the hook. That one's upside down, came Renee's helpful voice from over Betty's shoulder. You won, Grandma. Do you want me to go up and get the prize? She swiped at the ticket that Betty had thought said 9 on it. Betty stared at the voucher in the envelope. Next month? How is she supposed to book all of this and get ready to travel by next month? How is she supposed to get her Italian up to a usable standard? She would try to give up the trip to Katie, but it was non-transferable, and she knew full well that Katie wouldn't be able to get the time off work. When Betty got home, her cat, Fairy, was asleep in the bird bath. Fairy did this sometimes when the water had all dried up because the bird bath was in a nice sunny location, and possibly because there were often birds nearby. When Fairy was curled up in a perfect round white fluffy ball, she fitted perfectly into the round terracotta basin, filling it like some sort of feathery white liquid. Betty looked at the bird bath full of cat. It looks like I'm going to be taking an unexpected holiday, Fairy, she sighed. Barb next door will have to take care of you. I'm afraid she'll be rather more diligent about filling the bird bath than I am. Fairy's eyes appeared suddenly from within the mass of sunlit white fur. "What?" she answered. It sounded to Betty like a fairly contented reply. She suspected that the cat did not understand the unpleasantness of the news. Betty went inside to work on her Italian and called the travel agent. 87 might have been a strange age for it, but Betty had, over the past few years, discovered the world of Instagram. She mostly just followed other people and posted the occasional LARPing picture when she could make sense of the infernal updates the app was always getting. There was a certain kind of Instagram account that particularly appealed to Betty. It featured someone's pet or a toy or mascot of some kind, and the owner of this entity would post as though they were the pet, mascot or toy, referring to themselves as the human or as a parent, or in the cases Betty found most entertaining, the human or human being. Betty didn't think that Fairy would like to go on holiday. Probably she wouldn't even be allowed on the plane for such a long flight. But as Betty considered the trip, toying with a paper crane she'd brought home from the day's event, another thought occurred to her. Perhaps the paper crane could have Instagrammable adventures. This crane was Betty's favourite of that afternoon's efforts, made from red and white cherry blossom patterned paper. It was fairly robust and would fold back down to a flattened position in which it could be stored inside her purse. Betty felt that at 87, she probably shouldn't care about Instagram or feel excited about running a potentially popular account. But most 87-year-olds didn't do LARPing either. And somehow, Betty found that she was rather excited at this prospect. The idea that people anywhere in the world might get to witness her travels through the eyes of a small folded paper bird appealed to her enormously. And they wouldn't know that the human behind the account was 87, would they? Betty straightened her twin set and grabbed her walker, then scurried as fast as her walking frame would allow out of her front door and over to the neighbours. Betty's neighbour Barb was a bit younger than Betty and slightly more comfortable with the world of apps. Whilst Betty could, in theory, call Anae, she wasn't sure Anae would understand the concept of a travelling paper crane. And should Anae or Katie discover the paper crane account and like it, Betty felt it would be more fun if they didn't know that it was her behind it. "You want to do what?" frowned Barb, putting on her glasses, squinting, and then casting about for a different pair. "I want to set up a second account," Betty repeated, "one without my name on it. I want to call it Adventures of Carry the Crane." "That's too long for a username," Barb reported, peering through the bottom half of her lenses at the Instagram app. "Or just Carry Crane then," Betty decided. When Betty hopped into Barb's car for her trip to the airport a month later, Fairy was asleep in the bowl of the drain below Barb's hose tap. There hadn't been enough warm days yet for the hose to have to be used much, so Betty guessed that Fairy must have felt the risk of getting wet was minimal. "Be good for Barb, Fairy," Betty called. Fairy blinked in the sunshine and turned her fluffy white belly upward. 20 minutes down the road, Barb's car started to make some strange noises. A repetitive thunk sounded with each rotation of the wheels. Barb pulled over, and she and Betty both got out and tried to peer into the shadows under the body of the vehicle. It wasn't much use. Neither of them could kneel on the ground very well, and when Betty tried, she got stuck. Barb tried to help her up and promptly ended up sitting on her bottom on the footpath as well. With a resigned sigh, Betty reached into her bag, which was luckily within reach in the footwell beyond the car's open door. She felt about for her phone. "Oh dear," she turned to Barb. "I think I might have forgotten something important." 5 minutes later, Barb had managed to bottom wiggle her way closer to the car and pull herself up using Betty's seat. She called Katie, who arrived to discover that Barb's car was fine. The mysterious thumping had been caused by a skipping rope, which had somehow become wrapped around the axle and was swinging up to hit the underside of the car with its handles each time the axle turned. Betty's phone was retrieved, and she was, surprisingly, delivered to the airport in plenty of time for her flight. Carry the crane safely secreted in her purse, liquids neatly sealed in a transparent snaplock bag, and passport at the ready. Betty reassembled her walking frame in Paris with the help of a friendly young attendant who she couldn't understand at all. She hoped that she was saying "oui" at appropriate moments, But if she was honest, she could have been agreeing to go skydiving. The attendant guided her to an information desk, where Betty surmised from the symbols that cars could be hired, maps obtained, and hotels booked. She already had a hotel booking included in her itinerary. She just needed to find her way there. Betty propped her handbag on top of her suitcase and rifled around for the printout Anne had given her of the hotel receipt. Hopefully, if she pointed at it and said the word in her travel guide that looked like "ooh," someone would help her to get on the correct transport. When she straightened up, Betty was met with a fascinating sight. A very well-dressed, late teenage boy was standing at the information desk in front of her, and with him was a large, grey, fluffy cat in a red vest, which was attached to a thin red leash. Betty frowned at the cat. Something about them was oddly familiar. Suddenly realizing what it was, she let out a little excited gasp and edged up behind the young man, doing precisely as airport announcements told you not to do, and leaving her suitcase a short distance behind her. "Excuse me," she touched the young man's elbow. "Is this the Instagram cat? The one with the username The Scots Paws?" The boy turned and grinned at her. "It is. We don't get recognised in public very often, do we, Broderick?" He scooped the cat up and held him so that Betty could give him a pat. Broderick didn't look especially pleased about this, so Betty kept the pat short. "I'm Fraser," the young man added. "This is Broderick. Broderick the Brave was already taken as a username." He eyed Betty with a slightly confused expression. "How do you recognise us? You don't look like an Instagrammer." Betty drew herself up, straightening the top part of today's twin set. "Actually, I am, and a LARPer too." She tilted her head conspiratorially. "I'm just getting started on Instagram though." She pulled Carrie the Crane out of her purse and opened Instagram to show the new account. "You must be very experienced with it all. Maybe you can give me some pointers." Fraser looked at her suspiciously. "I dunno, sounds like we're going to be rivals." Betty conceded. "But wouldn't it be more fun to have a rival on your level, rather than one that's easy to..." She trailed off, not sure what the correct term was for out Instagram. "Beat?" suggested Fraser. "Not exactly." "Excuse me," came a French accented voice from the information desk. Fraser and Betty turned around. "Do you need assistance in English?" Betty and Fraser looked at one another, their Instagram rivalry momentarily forgotten. "We?" attempted Betty, reaching back to retrieve her suitcase. She and Fraser approached the desk together. To the information desk clerk, they must certainly have appeared to be travelling together. Only neither of them realised that at the time. To be continued.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, God.
Excellent.
As soon as I heard the cat and the leash, I went, "Ah!"
Yeah.
Yes, Fraser and
Me too. I
Broderick.
was like, oh,
Yeah,
of
me too.
course this would happen.
I was slightly
Oh my
tempted to
goodness.
try and bring some Fraser costumes
Oh,
in
there's no-
just in
no.
case, because I'm like,
So I had some thoughts about some different options for what the seniors' sport will be. I have a vague idea how it will fit in on this European tour, but no defined expectation of what it's going to be. So I thought it could be like the French bull. I remember watching something, I forget, it was a year in Provence that's in that they're
Yes.
very, very competitive about their bull.
Yeah, very.
The newcomers are sort of trying to learn.
You need to have big discussions about measurements and all that. I'm sure Andrew could make some suggestions about bowlers and their seriousness, and pétanque players are much the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought seniors soccer is always fun, and there's a sort of Father Ted inspiration there that I could draw on a bit. It could be an unusual sport related to the specific European country. I could do some research and come up with something that's fairly local. It's a senior sport, or we could have elders Irish dancing.
Those are all very good.
They are all very good.
Whatever. Sorry.
Curling on skates for an older person. That's very. It's like Andrew's
Curling would be fun.
I like the French one where they get really competitive about measurements. That seems like it would be very fun to hear about.
Oh, yeah. You don't just play the game, there's all the discussions and things.
Yeah.
As well.
Cats running rampant, disrupting said measurements.
Yeah, I think you could do a fair bit with the soccer, especially if you put the seniors bit in where they're not allowed to run.
They're not allowed to run, so it's walking soccer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So power walk.
Yeah, walking soccer is fun. May I request?
Sorry.
Sorry. I said, may I request, obviously you can't necessarily do all of these, but I think all of these would be wonderful. So maybe a future story time might actually be Motley Olympics or something with these or something. Because yeah.
Roller derby.
Bocce championship.
Roller derby. That would be very,
especially because of the outfit.
7-year-old.
You've got to wear the tiny little shorts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And bumpers on your knees and things.
Yeah.
But sometimes I have to put like, war paint on their face and things too, don't they? I can imagine Betty getting into that. Might manage to get a few in. For example, perhaps there's a decision to take part in or spectate at some sort of sporting activity in every country on the tour or something like that.
Sports where you can just kind of, not necessarily sports, but things where you just happen across people doing it. So like how in some European countries have the chess in the middle of the city, and then you walk around a corner and there's people just doing Tai Chi in a park, all those kind of things that people do out in the community that you could kind of just walk past and be like, oh, I'll do this.
Or that thing where you have kites and you fight the other person's kite. Or kite. I don't know what that's called. But I think that's the thing you would, some countries you would see in the park.
Kite. I'll just write kite fighting.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure whether or not that's one they'd find in Europe, but you never know.
Middle East. I know it can be in the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Sarah, you could bring in competitive hot air ballooning for Beth.
Competitive,
like hot air balloon races.
Is that even
or some modification of?
You can't really determine which way they go much, can you?
No.
That's what makes it so funny.
Is it just like who can like
splitting the air in and out, or at the elevation that you're at?
Yeah, maybe it's a competition like what's the furthest you can get in the hot air balloon before you sort of run out of fuel, or so that you've got to try and be really tactical about how much
or landing on a target.
Trying to land in a certain spot.
Most animals or delf were successfully transported in a hot air balloon. The Guinness World Record kind of hot air balloon.
Trying to break a Guinness World Record, maybe that could be that would be very much a Instagrammery thing. You might try.
Well, you could have the first paper crane and cat in harness plus humans to travel in a hot air balloon race. Guinness record, the very first.
Yeah, it could be that Fraser is traveling to participate in some kind of Instagram.
Yes, because we haven't gone into why Fraser's doing in France at present. Yes, so she could get roped into something that he's doing, going for that thing. Well, that'd be quite interesting if the Carrie the paper crane was to fall out. from the hot air balloon, and then there's a quest to find this tiny paper crane.
The crane. Oh, that's good.
Longest flight of paper crane, and the quest begins. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
And then there could be another stressful prize for finding the paper crane.
Reward 1 year's free Instagram post by Carry the Crane and product.
You maybe
She's offered to do some kind of posting on the person's behalf or something, and she doesn't really know how to do it yet. So
maybe if she loses Carry the Crane, maybe Fraser needs to use his Instagram following to ask people
to try and find this paper crane.
Yeah.
Last seen flying somewhere between such and such and such.
Exactly. So all of these Italian Instagrammers are trying to find the crane.
Yeah. With the Instagram put in limited Italian because neither Fraser nor
they don't really know. Yeah, that would be good to get some very limited second language in there. This time I was a little bit limited by sort of time, and I didn't have a lot of time to go and look up the languages and work out like what limited things they might be able to say and how to pronounce them properly.
Yeah.
How about you can correct Google translations?
Yes.
Because they could try and use Google Translate to do like captions in the local language.
It could be construction crane instead of crane or something like that.
Oh, that's good. You could do that thing where you I think sometimes if you like put an English phrase into Google Translate and you translate it into another language and then you put that phrase in and translate it back into English, sometimes you get a weird phrase.
That
so
would
you
be
could
fun
use that to say, you know, well, in Italian, this kind of comes out something like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
When I was in San Sebastian and I had primary school Spanish and I'd swatted up a little bit before I went there, and I had a reasonabely convincing accent, so I could say I sounded like I knew more than I did, and I'd said "Donata, it's nothing," because in context, and then back at me comes like fluent Spanish questions and chatter, and I'm going,
people are convinced that you know the language. That happened to me in the Netherlands because like I didn't look out of place with the locals. And I was walking places where they walk or skate or cycle a lot, and there are a lot less cars. So I guess I was sort of fitting in, and I was bringing my own bag and things like that. So whenever I went in the little shopping centre, they would always tell me how much in Dutch when I went to the cash register. They talk to like if there was someone who was clearly not from the Netherlands in front of me who looked different, they would say to them in English because they'd assume that would be the common language, and then I'd come up and they'd say the number in Dutch. Luckily there's quite a lot of crossover between Dutch and German, so I would have a vague idea what they were, the ballpark of the figure, but I'd also just do the math in my head when I was getting the items, and I'd have like the cash ready for more than it added up to, so I never really had to. But then I'd go, okay, goodbye, and they'd go, ooh.
Great.
I'm enjoying these meetings of previously unrelated characters. I quite like that thing,
Yeah.
And I like the way Betty could recognise Roderick.
Yeah.
Was it Broderick?
Broderick's cat,
Broderick, the cat, Instagram cat.
So the other thing I thought would be fun to have a little bit of input is I've got to get in this trying to mimic animal behaviour, and I wondered if there was any particular animals that you'd like to see Betty and Fraser and or other people they come across trying to behave like this particular animal.
Well, cats and dogs are the obvious ones.
Yeah, so obviously both of them have a cat, so that that could happen. and probably will.
The stalking cat wiggle, you know, that little wiggle thing. That
Oh,
makes
when they
them
do the
really
wiggle of the
ridiculous.
bottom before they
Yes.
pounce. Yeah. Okay. The stalking
Yeah, I'd
cat
like to
wiggle.
see I'd like to see Betty do that one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, with the walking frame. Yeah, that would be good.
And those birds that are like, they're some kind of shorebird, and when they walk along they do like this.
Yes.
You know, the little
yeah.
And they're on Instagram to the music.
Yeah,
People have done the little music background to
Yeah,
them. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
What about alpacas, Sarah?
Alpacas. Or pretending to try and imitate an alpaca or camel would be.
Yeah, and just
Involved lots of spitting,
describing the difference between an alpaca and a camel. Alpacas always look as though they've got a toupee that they haven't quite sort of got right on their head. You know?
Just kind of a little
Whoa.
What about an ostrich?
Oh yeah,
an ostrich.
Oh, I know what's nice. Another bird one. Have you seen owls? So owls have a thing where they keep their head really steady. So if you have them sitting on your arm and you move them, their body will be like that, and their head stays where it is. It's just extraordinary. They twist it like right round, and their head will still stay there. And it must be a thing about spotting prey or something.
Yeah.
But that would be fun.
Has anyone, I don't know if it could have even been Sarah or Claire who showed me this, but recently I saw pictures of owls lying down.
Oh.
I've seen a picture of an owl lying down because it's very weird.
Their legs are funny. They're very long.
They look so silly. I'll see if I can find one, but if you've got access to Google, I recommend you look up owl lying down. Mum says maybe that's what Betty looks like when she's trying out some kind of sport.
Yes, that did make me think to me that Betty might look like that. Yeah. And then someone says you look like an owl lying down, and it's like, what does an owl lying down look like? And then it could get into a whole thing where everyone's doing it.
Like really upset.
Yeah.
She discovers that someone has an Instagram account that's just pictures of owls
lying down.
Or people who look like owls lying down.
And then from there, she could discover that planking craze that was a thing for a while.
Yeah, she's like,
and then Betty could be doing planking.
Yes.
So are there any sort of small additions or extra topics that anyone would like to throw in?
Airport announcements, Sarah.
Airport announcements, yeah, we could certainly get that in.
I was going to say app updating when it's really inconvenient.
Oh yeah, because she's mentioned that, hasn't she? But yes, the app updating inconveniently. Yep. Obviously that has to happen.
Zoom call or something.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. So she's just figured out how to go live. all the buttons move around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, those both are very easy additions to make. Anything completely left field? Challenge me a bit.
I reckon the owls lying down was pretty good.
What about photo bombing?
Yeah.
Because that would be good in this context.
Yeah, they're trying to get their photos for their Instagram.
I'd like Betty to photo bomb people.
Oh,
she could get right into that, like a secondary thing, like other people's Instagram trying to be in the background of other people's ones. Yeah.
I'm gonna try and find that picture that I sent you, Sarah, of Thistle photobombing me.
Oh yeah,
in the chat, because I didn't realize he was in it until ages later.
Betty, because at the moment she's sort of set on it's just the crane, in the photos, and no one's going to know that it's her account, but maybe she slowly, by accident, ends up in the background of some of them, and then she starts to do that on purpose, that she's always there.
Reflections are in glass of Betty. She appears in every photo.
A mirror, or in a window.
In a window and in a car.
Yeah,
Which does by accident. She gets home and she's like being all secretive about it still, and then they're like, "We know it's yours. How do you know?"
You're always reflected in a
You
window.
can always see her
Reflected in the
somehow.
window. Yeah.
I just realized that when you're talking about an 87-year-old grandmother, do it for the gram is a really great phrase.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Oh, you got to work that line in, Sarah.
Yeah. Please include the line do it for the gram.
Writing
So
the
when
other
will
half of
it be, Sarah? What will it be?
Good question. Let's have a look. Is the 14th of May.
14th of May. Oh, that's good. Get a little bit more of a reprieve this time, a little bit more. Of
Had a
gap
proper
between.
month in between. That's good. In the meantime, between now and then, next Saturday at the same time is the next art exhibition premiere. So if you're free, please come and watch the art. There's lots of good bits and pieces in it from nice photographers and writers and artists.
Great to see
So we've got
everybody.
our next date for the, what did I just say? The 14th of May. Same time, if that's all right with everyone. It's
Yeah, I
really
think
good
it's
for me to
Yeah,
get to do it at 10, and it means that I might be able to get some UK friends along occasionally to watch. So 14th, same time, and in the meantime, there'll be art to see next week on the 16th. Yeah, something for everyone over Easter. Yes. Thank you
for a really
joining
fun
this
story.
little part one, and I look
you.
forward to writing the rest of it with your input from today to shape it a little bit. Sounds like good fun.
It does. Thank you very much for doing the story.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for gathering us all.
Yeah.
It's
It's good.
All right.
Right, everyone. Thank
Shall
you.
all the traveling toys just wave goodbye.